We are going to continue with Chapter 2, Hanu meets Castara. Having marched 1,000 miles, however, the Spaniards were not willing to give up their dreams of wealth so easily. Although this town that Fray Marcos had called Cibola was a great disappointment, Indians all along their route had spoken of rich lands to the north. The Spaniards were still convinced that the kingdoms of gold and silver must exist in this land. Making signs and using interpreters from tribes to the south, they asked all of the peoples they met where such kingdoms might be found. And they told the people of Zuni to send word to their neighbors that the Spaniards had come to seek these fabled lands. Soon the explorers began to hear of other kingdoms that might be the lands for which they searched. To the west were the people of Hopi, but the Spaniards found that they, like the Zuni, possessed no gold or silver. To the east lay Aku, or Akus, but as Coronado gathered more information, he concluded that this was not a kingdom, as Fray Marcos had claimed, but a single town. Further to the east, he heard, lay other small kingdoms not far from this settlement, and situated on a river. There, perhaps, the Spaniards might find the riches they sought. Word of the expedition's arrival had soon spread far throughout the region. In August, only a month after Coronado arrived at Haiku, a group of men from Pecos reached Zuni. In this pueblo far to the east, beyond the Rio Grande, the people had already learned that strange people, bold men who punished those who resisted them and gave good treatment to those who submitted, had come to make their acquaintance and be their friends. The men of Pecos had come to Zuni to say that if the strange men wished to travel east, the men of Pecos would guide them to the Rio Grande, to their own pueblo, and even beyond to the land of the buffalo. Coronado accepted their offer, sending Captain Hernando de Alvarado, Fray Juan de Padilla, and 20 Spaniards east with the Pecos guides. 15 miles east of Haiku, the trail split. One branch leading northeast to the pueblo of Tia, the other east to Acoma. The Spaniards, who chose the second, confirmed Coronado's suspicions. Acoma was not a kingdom, but a single village. This pueblo on the high mesa was another disappointment to the Spaniards. It had abundant supplies of maize, turkeys, and cotton cloth, but no gold or silver. Still, they would not abandon the dreams that drove them. They traveled on, going north past the Laguna region and then east between the Rio San Jose and the Rio Grande. After 3 days of travel, Alvarado and his men reached the Rio Grande somewhere near Isleta. They camped somewhat farther north, near the region of modern Albuquerque, and sent messengers to all of the pueblos nearby. September 8th, the day after the Spaniards' arrival, delegates from 12 pueblos came to their camp with gifts of food, cotton blankets, and hides. In return, Alvarado gave them some small articles. Like the people of Zuni, Hopi, and Acoma. These Rio Grande pueblos brought no gold or silver to offer to the Spaniards. So once again, following Coronado's instructions, the expedition moved on, heading east. Before the Spaniards left the Rio Grande pueblos, however, either Alvarado or Padilla sent news of this area, which they called Tiguex province, back to Coronado. This letter described a river flowing through a broad valley planted with fields of maize, with groves of cottonwood trees beside its banks. Near the Spaniards' camp stood 12 pueblos with 2-story houses like those of Cibola, but made of adobe rather than stone. The people were good farmers, and maize, beans, melons, and chickens, turkeys, in great abundance. Delegates had come from the 12 Tigua pueblos, and from the surrounding provinces to greet the Spaniards. All told, the region had 80 pueblos, all similar to those described in the letter. The prosperous Tigres region, an explorer suggested, would be a much better place for the expedition to spend the winter than the area around Huaycu. Well pleased with this report, Coronado sent an advanced party, led by Garcia Lopez de Sardenas, to set up a camp from the entire army along the Rio Grande in Tigres province, with 13 or 14 Spanish horsemen, numbers of the Mexican Indian allies, and several people from Zuni. Cardenas followed Alvarado's route east. At their destination, the Spaniards found the Indians of the province of Tigres friendly. For a short time, the Spaniards seemed to have been careful to maintain good relations with the native peoples. They began to prepare the lodgings outside of the pueblos in order not to cause hardship to the Indians. Soon after Cardenas arrived, however, snow began to fall along the Rio Grande, and Cardenas begged the Indians to clear a pueblo in order that the soldiers might establish their lodgings in it. The Spanish leader suggested that the pueblo's residents could find homes in the other pueblos, taking only their food and clothing. The Tigres people vacated the pueblo Alcanfor, or Cufor, which stood somewhere near the modern site of Bernalillo. The 14 Spaniards quickly moved into the pueblo and began to prepare for the arrival of the expedition forces. Coronado and his men, Alvarado's exploration party, and Arellano group. The Arellano group, the Mexican Indians, and the large herd of horses and livestock. Alvarado's men, the first to arrive at the winter camp, brought welcome news. Beyond the lands they had visited, still farther to the east, lay a province known as Quivira, a land so rich that even common bowls were made of gold. Better still, they brought back an Indian who could guide them to Quivira when spring came. Shortly after Alvarado's arrival, Coronado and 30 other Spaniards reached Alcanfor. On their way, they had circled south to investigate the province of Tutahaso Yet another village of adobe pueblos with no jewels or precious metals. We will stop here for now, and we will finish this chapter in our next reading. Thank you for joining me.